The Jakarta heat always felt heavier in our living room, thick and humid, clinging to everything. It was especially stifling when my parents were home, especially when they were talking about my future. Or, more accurately, when they were talking about my lack of a proper future. I was 24, and while my friends were starting out in big corporate offices or securing government positions, I was hunched over bolts of fabric in a corner of my bedroom, sketching designs and trying to figure out shipping logistics. Anara, my father, Bapak Pramana, would say, his voice a low rumble that always made my stomach clench. He was a retired government official, a man who believed in order, stability, and visible success. To him, success meant a steady salary, a pension plan, and a prestigious title. My passion for textiles, for the vibrant patterns of batik and ikat, for the stories woven into each thread, was just, well, it was a diversion. When will you get a real job, this small business of yours is just playing dress up? He'd make a dismissive wave with his hand, as if brushing away a persistent fly. My mother, Ibu Sari, was softer, but her words carried their own kind of weight. She worried constantly, not just about me, but about what the neighbors thought, what our relatives would say. Anara, darling, she'd plead, her voice tinged with anxiety. How much longer will you play with fabric? Your cousin, Kirana, just got promoted at the bank, you know. Such a bright girl, making good money. Kirana was always the benchmark, the shining example of what I wasn't. I called my venture Nusantara Threads. Nusantara means archipelago, referring to Indonesia's thousands of islands. I wanted to bring the incredible, diverse textile traditions from remote villages, the ones often overlooked, to a global audience. I wanted to ensure the artisans, many of them women, received fair wages and recognition for their meticulous craft. It wasn't just about selling fabric. It was about preserving heritage and empowering communities. But how do you explain that to parents who saw only a lack of a steady paycheck? My office was a cramped corner of my bedroom. My warehouse quickly became stacked boxes in the living room, much to my mother's exasperation. Every time a delivery arrived, she'd sigh dramatically. More boxes, Anara? Where will we put them all? The house, usually so orderly, felt like it was bursting at the seams with my ambition. Family gatherings were the worst. Relatives, armed with my parents' pronouncements, would descend like well-meaning inquisitors. Still making those little bags, Anara? An aunt would ask, her eyes full of pity. Uncles would offer unsolicited business advice, usually involving me getting a loan I didn't need, or worse, abandoning my dream for a safer path. Just get a job at a big company, Anara. Much less headache. They'd nod sagely, as if they'd just unlocked the secret to happiness. I tried to explain. I talked about ethical sourcing, about direct trade with artisans, about the unique beauty of hand-loomed textiles. Their eyes would glaze over. They wanted to hear about a monthly salary, a company car, a corner office. They wanted to hear about things they understood, things that fit their definition of success. My quiet passion, my slow but steady progress, meant nothing in the face of their deeply ingrained beliefs. One evening, I remember meticulously laying out a new collection of hand-printed batik on my bedroom floor, inspecting each piece for flaws, my heart swelling with pride at the intricate patterns. My father poked his head in. Anara, the internet bill is due. Are you sure you can afford all this material? Maybe you should consider applying for that opening at the ministry. It's stable. He didn't even look at the fabric. He just saw expenses, risks, and a missed opportunity for a real job. It wasn't malice. I truly believe that. It was fear. Fear that I would struggle. Fear that I would fail. Fear that I wouldn't live up to their expectations. But their fear manifested as constant criticism, as belittling remarks, as a steady erosion of my confidence. Sometimes, after a particularly pointed comment from my father, or a tearful plea from my mother, I would doubt myself. Was I foolish? Was I chasing a fantasy? Then I'd look at the textiles. I'd remember the smiling faces of the artisans I'd met in small villages, their hands calloused but their eyes shining as they showed me their craft. I'd remember the vibrant colors, the stories each pattern told, and a quiet resolve would settle over me. I wouldn't give up, not yet. I had to see this through, even if it meant enduring their endless questions and dismissals in our hot, cramped living room. I knew, deep down, that Nusantara Threads was more than just playing dress-up. It was my future, whether they saw it or not. I learned to live with the background noise of their skepticism. It became a constant hum, like the distant traffic in Jakarta, something you learn to tune out or at least minimize. My focus was entirely on Nusantara Threads. Every free moment, every ounce of my energy went into it. My days were a blur of activity. I'd spend hours researching different textile traditions, diving deep into the history of specific patterns and dyeing techniques. Then came the meticulous sourcing. It wasn't just about finding fabric. It was about finding the right communities, the artisans who still practiced methods passed down through generations. This often meant long bus rides out of the city. Sometimes even little propeller planes to islands where paved roads were a luxury. I remember one trip to a small village in Sumatra. The journey was grueling, dusty, and hot. But when I finally arrived, the women there welcomed me with shy smiles and showed me their intricate songket weaving. The designs were breathtaking, each thread telling a story. They worked slowly, carefully, their looms set up under simple shelters. I sat with them, drank sweet tea, and listened to their stories. Their dedication, their skill, it fueled something in me. This was why I was doing this. This was the heart of Nusantara Threads. Negotiating fair prices was crucial. I knew what these pieces were worth, and I knew what the market in the city often paid the artisans, a fraction of their true value. It was a delicate dance, building trust, explaining my vision for bringing their work to a wider audience, ensuring they understood the benefit of a long-term partnership. It took time, but I believed in it completely. Back in Jakarta, the real work of building a business began. My initial sales were slow, mostly to friends and a few online enthusiasts who stumbled upon my small website. I learned about e-commerce, digital marketing, and the complexities of international shipping. Every successful order, no matter how small, felt like a huge victory. Each time a customer from halfway across the world left a review praising the quality and uniqueness of a piece, I felt a quiet satisfaction. It was working. Slowly, but surely, it was working. My parents, of course, didn't see any of this. They saw me perpetually glued to my laptop, making phone calls at odd hours, and occasionally receiving large, heavy packages. "More of your crafts, Anara?" my father would say, shaking his head. "Are you making any money from this, truly?" I never gave them specific numbers. What was the point? They wouldn't understand the small margins, the reinvestment, the long-term vision. They just wanted to see a big, impressive number in a bank account. And honestly, I didn't want to give them more ammunition for their worries. So I'd just say, "It's growing, Papa. It's growing." It was during these early challenging months that I found Jax. I'd put out an ad for part-time help, someone to assist with order fulfillment and inventory. Jax walked in, looking sharp and incredibly organized, with an almost unsettling calm about him. He had this quiet intensity, observing everything. He had a background in logistics for a small e-commerce startup that had recently folded. "I need someone who can handle chaos," I told him during his interview, gesturing to the stacks of boxes in my living room. He just looked around, a faint smile touching his lips. "Chaos is just an opportunity for better systems, Anara," he said. And he was right. Jax quickly became indispensable. He brought an order to my budding operation that I hadn't even realized was possible. He streamlined my packaging process, negotiated better rates with couriers, and somehow managed to keep track of every single piece of fabric, every order, every customer. He was quiet, but incredibly effective. More than an assistant, he became a strategic partner, seeing the potential in Nusantara threads that even I sometimes struggled to grasp amidst the daily grind. He rarely offered unsolicited advice, but when he did, it was always insightful, always precise. One day, I got an email. It was an invitation to a major international textile trade fair in Singapore. This wasn't just any fair. It was the holy grail for textile businesses, where major buyers from around the world came to source new collections. It was a huge step, a massive investment, but I knew, deep down, it was our chance. My chance. I showed the invitation to Jax. He looked at it, then at me. "This is big, Anara," he said, his voice calm. "Are you ready?" "I have to be." I told him, "This is it." My parents' reaction when I told them I was going to Singapore for a textile exhibition was predictable. "Singapore? Anara, that's expensive. Are you sure you should be spending money on these trips? You should be saving, for a down payment on a house or a car." My father sighed, rubbing his temples. "This business of yours, it just seems like a bottomless pit." I just nodded, smiled politely, and changed the subject. Their words still stung, but less so now. I was too focused. The exhibition was my mountain, and I was going to climb it. With Jax by my side, I packed our samples, prepared my pitch, and boarded that plane to Singapore, a knot of nervousness and excitement tightening in my stomach. I knew this was a make-or-break moment for Nusantara threads, and for me. Singapore hit us like a wave, a dazzling, organized wave of efficiency and ambition. The exhibition center was enormous, a buzzing hive of commerce and creativity. When Jax and I first walked into the main hall, I felt a tremor of nerves. So many booths, so many established names. Our little Nusantara threads display felt tiny in comparison, tucked away in a corner of the emerging brands section. But we had come prepared. Months of hard work, sleepless nights, and countless revisions had gone into our presentation. Our booth was small, but meticulously arranged. We displayed our finest batik, our vibrant ikat weaves, and our unique, handcrafted accessories. Each piece had a small card explaining its origin, the village it came from, and the story of the artisans. We also had a digital presentation showcasing videos of the weaving process, which Jax had brilliantly put together. He'd thought of everything, even tiny little lights to highlight the intricate details of the fabric. The first day was a whirlwind. People streamed past, some glancing, some stopping for a moment. I put on my most confident smile, practiced my elevator pitch, and talked until my throat was hoarse. Jax was incredible. He moved with quiet efficiency, answering technical questions, handling inquiries about shipping, and always making sure I had water or a fresh cup of coffee. He had this way of making people feel at ease, even the most intimidating buyers. I remember one particular moment. A woman elegantly dressed, with piercing blue eyes, paused at our booth. She picked up a piece of batik, her fingers tracing the delicate wax-resist patterns. "This is exquisite," she said, her voice smooth, with a distinct European accent. "The quality is exceptional." She introduced herself as Alara, a senior buyer for a major ethical fashion retailer based in Paris. My heart pounded. This was exactly the kind of contact I had dreamed of. I told her about our mission, about the artisans, about our commitment to fair trade and sustainability. She listened intently, asking smart, probing questions. Jax provided her with detailed spec sheets and pricing, answering every query with precision. We talked for almost an hour. Alara seemed genuinely impressed. She said she appreciated our transparency and the authenticity of our products. Before she left, she promised to send a follow-up email. I tried not to get my hopes up too much, but it was hard. She felt like a genuine connection. The next 2 days were a blur of similar interactions. We met buyers from Tokyo, designers from New York, and boutique owners from London. Each conversation felt like a small victory. The energy in the hall was infectious, and despite the exhaustion, I felt invigorated. Toward the end of the fair, Alara's email arrived. It wasn't just a follow-up. It was an invitation for a much larger meeting. She wanted to discuss a potential partnership, a significant order for her entire chain of stores. My hands trembled as I read the email. I showed it to Jax, who just gave a rare, wide smile. "This is it, Anara," he said. "This is the big one." The meeting with Alara took place a few weeks later, back in Jakarta, at a co-working space I rented for the occasion. We spent hours going over designs, production capacities, and logistics. It was exhilarating, challenging, and at times overwhelming. But Alara believed in us. She believed in Nusantara Threads. The deal we signed with her company was transformational. It wasn't just an order. It was a commitment to a long-term collaboration. It meant we could finally scale up. It meant hiring more artisans, expanding our workshop, and securing a proper office space. It meant Nusantara Threads was no longer just a dream in my bedroom. It was a legitimate, growing business. When I briefly mentioned the successful fair and a new partnership to my parents, their reaction was muted. "That's nice, dear," my mother said vaguely, already distracted by a phone call from a distant cousin. My father just grunted. "Just be careful, Anara. These big deals can be risky. Don't get ahead of yourself." They still couldn't see it, or perhaps they didn't want to. They were too focused on the image of their daughter struggling in a small, uncertain venture. But I knew. Jax knew, and now the world was starting to know. Nusantara Threads was about to take flight, and I was ready for it. The deal with Ilara's company changed everything. It wasn't an overnight transformation, but it was a steady, undeniable acceleration. The days of working out of my bedroom, with boxes stacked precariously in the living room, quickly became a distant memory. First, we moved into a proper office space in a modern building in central Jakarta. It wasn't huge, but it felt enormous to me, a real, dedicated workspace. It had a small showroom for client visits and a larger area for our growing inventory. My parents, of course, had no idea. I simply told them I was working from a co-working space now, to avoid the questions about rent and overhead. They probably just imagined me at a shared desk, still barely scraping by. With the increased orders, we needed more hands on deck. We started by hiring a few young, enthusiastic individuals to help with order fulfillment, packaging, and customer service. They were quick learners, and their energy infused the small office with a new kind of excitement. It felt like a real team. But the biggest growth was in the production side. The demand for our hand-loomed textiles meant we needed to scale up our artisan network significantly. Jax was instrumental here. He had a brilliant mind for logistics and supply chain management. He developed a system for tracking production from each village, ensuring quality control, and coordinating timely deliveries. We expanded our reach, building relationships with more weaving communities across different islands. I made more trips, not just to source, but to personally oversee the new partnerships and ensure our ethical standards were maintained. It was important to me that as Nusantara Threads grew, the benefits flowed directly back to the communities that made our products so special. I remember one conversation with Jax, sitting late in our new office, surrounded by design sketches and production schedules. "Anara," he said, looking at a map of Indonesia, dotted with pins marking our artisan partners. "We're doing something remarkable here. This isn't just about business, it's about impact." His words resonated deeply with me. It was exactly what I had dreamed of from the beginning. Our online presence grew too. The initial feature in the tech publication and the viral social media buzz had given us a strong foundation. Now, with a larger inventory and consistent supply, we could truly leverage it. Our website became more professional, our social media campaigns more sophisticated. We started attracting individual customers, not just large retailers, who were drawn to our story and our commitment to sustainability. Still, despite all this palpable growth, my parents remained in their own little bubble of polite skepticism. I rarely spoke of the specifics of our success. When my mother asked how things were going, I'd offer a vague, positive update. "Things are good, Mom. Busy." My father would occasionally ask if I was turning a profit yet, And I'd just smile and say, "We're reinvesting a lot, Bapak." They continued to see me as their daughter who was playing with fabric. They didn't see the dozens of employees, the complex logistics, the international deals. They didn't see the balance sheets, the revenue numbers that were steadily climbing into figures that would have shocked them. Their definition of success was so fixed, so traditional, that the subtle organic growth of Nusantara threads simply didn't register. Sometimes, I'd hear them on the phone, talking to relatives. "Anara's still doing her textile thing," my father would say with a slight chuckle. "Bless her heart, she's trying." Or my mother would sigh, "We just worry about her, it's so uncertain." It was frustrating, but I had learned to channel that frustration into fuel. Their doubt, their quiet mockery became a hidden motivator. It wasn't about proving them wrong, not exactly. It was about proving myself right. It was about showing that passion, ethical practices, and hard work could build something truly substantial, even if it didn't fit into their preconceived notions of what a real job looked like. We were quietly, steadily building an empire, and soon, very soon, the silence of our ascent would be impossible to ignore. Life at Nusantara Threads picked up an exhilarating pace. We weren't just growing, we were thriving. Our team expanded to nearly 30 people, from designers and marketing specialists to logistics coordinators. Our production facility, now a bustling hub in North Jakarta, was humming with activity, housing dozens of skilled artisans meticulously creating our textiles. We even opened a small, elegant flagship store in a high-end shopping district in central Jakarta, a place where customers could see and feel the beauty of our products firsthand. My parents, incredibly, still seemed to operate under the assumption that I was involved in some quaint, struggling craft business. I rarely invited them to the office or the production facility. It wasn't out of spite, but a practical decision. They often asked questions that highlighted their lack of understanding, and I simply didn't have the time or energy to educate them on the intricacies of running an international business. When I mentioned the new store, my mother simply said, "Oh, that's nice, dear. Like a little souvenir shop?" I just smiled and changed the subject. The biggest sign of our company's expansion, the one that truly changed our daily operations, was the acquisition of our own corporate jet. It sounds extravagant, I know, but it was a strategic necessity. We were constantly flying to meet international clients in New York, London, Paris, and Tokyo. We also needed to transport key personnel and, occasionally, even delicate, high-value raw materials from remote regions of Indonesia to our main production hub. Commercial flights were inefficient, time-consuming, and often unreliable for our specific needs. Owning our own jet meant flexibility, security, and the ability to conduct high-level meetings in transit. It was a significant investment, but one that Jax had strongly advocated for, presenting a meticulously detailed financial projection that showed its long-term cost-effectiveness. When the sleek, beautiful jet, subtly branded with the Nusantara Threads logo, arrived at Halim Perdanakusuma International Airport, I felt a surge of pride. It was a tangible symbol of how far we had come. My parents, of course, knew nothing of this. They still thought I was taking regular commercial flights, probably economy class, and staying in budget hotels on my business trips. They would occasionally ask about my travel, usually with a worried tone. "Are you getting enough rest, Anara? All this flying must be exhausting for your little business." The idea for the exclusive showcase aboard the jet actually came from Jax. We were preparing to launch our most ambitious collection yet, a fusion of traditional Indonesian motifs with modern, minimalist designs aimed at a high-net-worth international clientele. We needed a unique, memorable way to present it. "Why not host a small, intimate event?" Jack suggested, his eyes gleaming with an idea. "A private dinner, a preview of the collection, all while flying to Singapore for the regional launch. It would be exclusive, unforgettable, and it would quietly demonstrate our capabilities." I loved the idea. It was bold, sophisticated, and perfectly aligned with the luxury market we were targeting. We carefully curated the guest list, a few key international buyers, influential fashion journalists, and some strategic investors. Then Jack suggested something that made my stomach clench with a mix of trepidation and a strange anticipation. "And Anara," he said, "I think you should invite your parents." I stared at him. "My parents? Jax, they'll think it's a joke. They still think I'm running a small craft stall." He just gave me his calm, knowing look. "Precisely. Sometimes seeing is believing. Let them see, Anara. Let them see for themselves." A part of me wanted to refuse. I had grown accustomed to their dismissals, almost comfortable with their lack of understanding. It meant I didn't have to explain, didn't have to defend. But another part, a deeply buried part, yearned for their acknowledgement. Not for validation, but for them to simply see me, to truly understand what I had built. So I sent the invitations, elegantly embossed, with the Nusantara Threads logo subtly integrated into the design. "You are cordially invited to an exclusive showcase of our upcoming collection, followed by a private dinner, aboard our corporate jet, en route to Singapore." I wondered if they would even show up. I wondered what they would say. I wondered if, even faced with the undeniable reality, they would find a way to dismiss it. The day of the event arrived, and my heart beat a little faster than usual. This wasn't just a business event anymore. It was personal. The day of the slight was a blur of last-minute preparations. I was dressed in a tailored, elegant power suit, a far cry from the casual clothes I usually wore in the workshop or office. It was a statement, I suppose, not just for our clients, but for myself. Jax was, as always, impeccably dressed and perfectly calm, overseeing every detail with his usual quiet efficiency. My heart pounded a little harder when I heard the car pull up to the private hangar at Halim Perdana Kusuma International Airport. This wasn't the regular commercial terminal they were used to. This was a discreet, executive entrance. I watched from the window as my parents stepped out of their taxi, looking a little bewildered. My father, Bapak Pramana, adjusted his spectacles, scanning the tarmac with a puzzled expression. My mother, Ibu Sari, clutched her handbag, her brow furrowed with mild anxiety. They saw the sleek corporate jet first. It gleamed under the Jakarta sun, its pristine white body subtly adorned with the Nusantara Threads logo. My father stopped, dead in his tracks. I could almost hear his mind working, trying to reconcile this image with his perception of my small business. Jax met them at the foot of the aircraft stairs, a polite, professional smile on his face. "Bapak Pramana, Ibu Sari," he greeted them with a respectful nod. "Welcome. Anara is just finishing up a call inside. Please, make yourselves comfortable." He led them up the steps. I could see my father's eyes darting around, taking in every detail of the luxurious interior. The plush leather seats, the polished wood accents, the large screen displaying our company's logo. It was clearly no rented prop plane, no photo op. It was unmistakably a high-end corporate jet. As they entered the main cabin, I was there. I was finishing a video call in fluent English, discussing supply chain logistics, with someone who looked suspiciously like a major international retail CEO. I made sure to be professional, confident, and entirely focused. When I looked up and saw their faces, the mix of shock, disbelief, and a dawning understanding was almost comical. "Bapa, Ibu," I said, my voice warm, trying to keep any hint of triumph out of it. "So glad you could make it." My father cleared his throat, a sound he usually made when he was about to deliver some pronouncement or piece of unsolicited advice. But this time, no words came out. He just stared, his mouth slightly open. My mother's hand went to her chest, her eyes wide. Jax, ever the subtle master of ceremonies, calmly offered them refreshments. "Would you care for some cold tea, Ibu Sari, Bapa Pramana?" They sat down, stiffly at first, in the luxurious seats. The engines whirred to life, and the jet began to taxi. My father kept glancing out the window, then back at me, then at Jax. He still hadn't spoken a word. During the flight, I conducted a brief presentation of our new collection on the cabin's large screen. I talked about the intricate designs, the sustainable practices, the impact we were making on artisan communities. I answered questions from our international guests with ease and confidence. Jax, meanwhile, moved around the cabin, attending to everyone's needs, anticipating questions, always a step ahead. I saw my parents watching me, really watching me, for the first time, not as their daughter playing dress-up, but as the CEO of a thriving enterprise. They heard me speak about global markets, about revenue growth, about future expansion plans. They saw the respect in the eyes of the international buyers when they addressed me. They saw the seamless efficiency with which Jax managed everything. It wasn't just the jet. It was the entire ecosystem of success that unfolded before them. The quiet confidence in my voice, the detailed knowledge of my business, the professionalism of my team. All the things they had dismissed for years, all the things they couldn't see when I was working from my bedroom, were now laid bare, undeniable, floating above the clouds. When we landed in Singapore and the other guests began to disembark, my parents remained seated. The silence in the cabin, after all the polite chatter, was heavy. My father looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of awe and something that looked a lot like regret. My mother's eyes were glistening. The moment of truth had arrived. The silence in the cabin after the last of our guests had disembarked was profound. It was a silence that held years of unspoken words, of dismissals, and of misunderstood dreams. My father, Babak Pramana, finally broke it. His voice was softer than I had ever heard it, stripped of its usual bravado and certainty. "Anara," he began, his gaze fixed on me. This is magnificent. We had no idea. We truly had no idea of the scale of this." He gestured vaguely around the luxurious cabin, then towards the bustling private terminal outside the window. His eyes, usually so sharp and critical, were now filled with something that looked like awe, and perhaps a touch of regret. My mother, Ibu Sari, reached across the table. Her hand trembled slightly as she took mine. Her eyes were glistening with tears, but these weren't tears of worry, as I had grown accustomed to seeing. These were tears of pride, and something else that felt like apology. "My daughter," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I am so proud of you. Forgive us. We didn't understand. We were so wrong." She squeezed my hand, her grip firm and loving. In that moment, a wave of complex emotions washed over me. There was no overwhelming sense of triumph, no urge to say, "I told you so." Just a deep, quiet sense of peace. All those years of subtle mockery, of being dismissed as playing dress-up, of their constant anxieties about my small business, it all faded into the background. Their acknowledgement, so belated, yet so genuine, was enough. "It's been a busy few years, Babak, Ibu," I said softly, my voice calm. "But I'm really proud of what we've built. We're creating jobs for so many talented artisans, bringing their incredible work to the world and doing it all sustainably." I didn't need to elaborate on the numbers, the international clients, the complexities of the business. They had seen it for themselves. The jet, the team, the confident woman they had just witnessed leading a global operation. That was the explanation. Jax, ever discreet, had quietly moved to the front of the cabin, giving us this private moment. He understood. The conversation that followed wasn't a grand reconciliation filled with dramatic declarations. It was quieter, more profound. They asked questions, but this time, they were genuine questions, born of curiosity and respect, not veiled judgment. They wanted to know about the artisans, about the challenges, about the future plans. They listened, truly listened, as I spoke. As we disembarked and headed to the hotel, the dynamic had shifted. It was palpable. My father walked beside me, no longer offering unsolicited advice, but asking thoughtful questions. My mother held my arm, her touch gentle and warm. They were no longer seeing me through the lens of their expectations, but through the reality of my achievements. That evening, over dinner, my father raised his glass. To Nusantara Threads, he said, his voice husky, and to my daughter, Anara, you have built something truly extraordinary. My mother beamed, her eyes shining. It was a simple toast, but it carried more weight than any lavish praise. The experience changed our relationship. It wasn't about the corporate jet itself, but what the jet represented. The undeniable, soaring success that had grown from a seed of passion and relentless hard work. My parents no longer offered advice about getting a real job. Instead, they spoke of pride, and sometimes even asked for my business insights on their own affairs. They became my quiet supporters, attending product launches and proudly showing off Nusantara Threads products to their friends. I learned a profound lesson that day. True success isn't always loud or immediately visible. It often begins quietly, nurtured by passion and perseverance, even when others dismiss it. I didn't set out to prove them wrong. I set out to build something I believed in, and in doing so, I not only achieved my dream, but also earned their respect.